Coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, you're listening to the Mythic Radio Podcast.
The first time it happened, I was sleeping and woke up because I felt a hand on my leg and I realized that I couldn't move.
And he come across this object on the ground which was the shape of a flying saucer. So he jumped out of his pickup and went down there, and there was 4 beings laying on the ground.
When I raised my head back up, I was turning my head, and out of my peripheral vision, I seen something hop to a tree. And it was tall, about 7-8 foot tall, and it was black, real hairy, like a gorilla.
The first thing we saw was this winged creature, 14-foot wingspan at least. It was huge. It almost covered half the road.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Nick. Today is Wednesday, September 13th, and this is episode 14. You can visit us over at mythicradio.com and share your own experiences by clicking on the Tell Your Story link. You can also get involved by joining our forums and by following us across all social media. It's a great place to ask questions and start new topics on what interests you. New episodes of the podcast are available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, and YouTube. We've got a few different things to cover in this episode, including some additional content that we're making for the podcast, as well as more eyewitness accounts from one of our avid listeners. Creating the Mythic Radio Podcast has been a dream come true for me, and I want to be able to bring you, my listeners, more quality content in the months and years to come. I've also been trying to create a way for you to easily access all of our content, as well as having a more organic way of communicating with me and fellow listeners. The way I've decided to do this is with a new community called Mythic Member Rewards. We want to give our listeners a single hub where you can find all of our regular podcasts and updates, as well as extra content that will be available to our supporters. Our Mythic members will have access to multiple levels of additional content, depending on the level of support you choose. Our rewards program offers additional options which include access to the Mythic Radio community, member polls, early access to podcasts, and even bonus episodes, just to name a few. I promise you that the weekly episodes of the podcast will always be free to listen to. However, in order to guarantee the longevity of the podcast and offer you additional content, I do need your help. In order to learn more about the Mythic member community, visit patreon.com/Mythic Radio. Please remember, support is optional, and all of our regularly scheduled podcasts are available on our Patreon site as well. See below for a link to our community page. The other quick bit of business I have is over on Twitter. I'm running a poll to learn where the majority of you listen to the Mythic Radio Podcast. If you'd like to share your favorite site, visit twitter.com/Mythic Radio Live and choose from the options listed, or leave me a message if you don't see your option in the list. I'll also put a link to the poll on our Facebook page. Both of those links are in the information below. Thank you in advance. Finally, we're adding a new segment to the podcast, which I call Mythic Moments. You may have heard our first episode on September 6th. Mythic Moments are brief updates regarding current unexplained activity that's taking place somewhere in the world, and typically lasting less than 5 minutes in length. Stay tuned for more of those. Okay, enough business, let's get to the fun stuff. One of our many wonderful listeners and eyewitnesses, Jessica from Austin, Texas, writes in again and says, "Nick, thank you for taking the time to read and share my experiences. Sharing them jogged my memory regarding past happenings that I had disregarded or deemed insignificant, because they were small in comparison to the extravagant experiences I've heard by others. I'm reminded of 3 incidents that occurred within a few months of one another. Several years ago, there was a season of my life when I heard and experienced unexplainable things. I received a call at work from my mother accusing me of locking our dog in the back bedroom of her house. At the time, I lived with my mother but had not accessed that bedroom for any reason that day. In fact, that room was used for storage. I had no reason to access it. My mom was convinced that either I or my sister had locked the dog in the bedroom. My sister did not live with my mom, nor had she stopped by the house that day. I assured my mom that more than likely the dog had gone into the bedroom while the door was open without her knowledge and she had locked him inside. She claimed to have not gone into the room that day. Also, she kept the room locked, so there would have been no way that the dog could have accessed the room on his own, not even accidentally. There was no evidence of a break-in, no open windows, no compromised locks. We couldn't explain what happened that day. It's worth noting that the same thing happened nearly a year to the date of that initial event. That too was unexplainable. Another time, my dog and I witnessed something together while we were alone in the house. He and I were in my bedroom while I was getting ready to go out for the evening. It was late afternoon, close to the time when my mom would be arriving home from work. My dog heard the creaking of the back door because he looked up and watched in that direction when he heard what he thought was the door opening. I didn't think anything about the sound of the back door opening until 10 or 15 minutes passed without my mom saying hello. I thought it was strange that she didn't stop by my room to say hi because that was her routine. She always greeted me when she came home. Because it was silent in the house and there was no sign of my mom having arrived home, I went to the back door and discovered that it was locked, even deadbolted. There was no evidence that she had been home. When my mom arrived home later, I told her about what my dog and I heard, and asked if she had come home and then left. She denied coming home and then leaving. It wouldn't have been my sister stopping by, because she too would have announced herself. We never understood or could explain those 3 incidents. Still, on occasion, we mention and wonder about them. As always, Jessica, I appreciate you writing in again and sharing your past experiences. Those are some of my favorite experiences, when you know that you've witnessed something and even your pet verifies that they are hearing or seeing something as well. Interesting as always. Thank you, Jessica. The next subject that I want to touch base on is the rash of flying humanoid sightings that continue to be reported in the Chicago area, sometimes as often as twice a week. I've been following these encounters since they began, and it seems as though the frequency is increasing. The most recent reported sighting occurred on September 7th and was sent to the UFO Clearinghouse on Sunday, September 10th, 2017. This is what the eyewitness states. I took my family out to the Lincoln Park Zoo on Thursday, September 7th, 2017, at about 4 p.m. We stayed there until around 7 p.m., and we were just enjoying being outside in the perfect weather. After the zoo closed at about 5 p.m., we stayed, played ball, and enjoyed the afternoon. As we were leaving to head home, we heard a commotion coming from a group of people about 20 yards away from us. We looked in the general direction of the commotion and saw people pointing up toward the sky. We looked up to see a large creature with a giant set of wings flying over us, barely skimming the tops of the trees. We saw it for about 5 seconds as it circled around the trees and then disappeared, heading into the general direction of North Avenue Beach. It looked human-like, but had a large pair of wings which must have been at least 12 feet wide, if I had to go make a guess, and looked a lot like bat wings. It was solid black, no discernible features, but you could tell that it had arms, legs, and a head, although they looked very skinny. It was flapping its wings repeatedly and appeared to be gaining speed. After it disappeared, someone in the crowd said that there had been multiple sightings of this thing all summer long. That is why I got online and started looking up these sightings, and then reported it to your website. I do want to note that when the commotion started, and for a few minutes afterwards, many of the animals in the zoo were clearly disturbed and vocalizing as if something had upset them. There was no further sighting or strange occurrences for the rest of the night, and we ended up going home. As I said before, it seems as though these eyewitness accounts are becoming more frequent and are involving groups of people at a time. What I'm trying to find out is what the public officials are saying about these reports. Are emergency dispatchers getting calls of reported sightings, and if so, how are they handling it? Numerous police stations have been questioned regarding the strange sightings, but none of them seem to have much to say. I'll keep you updated on this topic moving forward. As always, let me know if you guys have any information on the Chicago encounters. Let me know in the comments below, or if you have a question or story for me, you may contact me at mythicradio@gmail.com, or just by visiting mythicradio.com. I'd also like to remind you that if you enjoy the show, please click the follow and like buttons. It helps us know exactly what kind of content you guys are finding interesting. From all of us at Mythic Radio, thanks for listening, and remember, Don't wait for the unknown to come to you. Get out there and find it.